Hey, it's News from Heaven. Today we're going to be looking at the different ways that people hear spirits. Emanuel Swedenborg, scientist, relatively well-respected gentleman, began reporting that he could, pierce the veil, as you might call it, hear dead people as we would now, or see dead people. Shoot, that's Sixth Sense is about seeing. Oh, did I spoil? No, I didn't give it away. The point is, if he was going around doing that, being able to communicate with the other side, does this happen to all of us, and under what conditions, and is it dangerous or is it good? And how can we make something like that, which happens in a particular slice of life, which you may have wondered about or not, how's that relevant to all of us? Like and subscribe if you're enjoying, if the show has been relevant to you. Leave a comment. And what we're hoping is that even if we're describing things like the different ways people hear spirits, you may have a curiosity about it, you may not. This should help us get out from under the negative head weather. Just thinking about seeing life from the perspective that we see it from in the material we go through. It's all looking towards, hey, there's something better out there. Their ego isn't the only answer to things. Can we, even in this subject, somehow help everyone out of the mental weather that keeps us down? Let's see, man. We're going to be in Heaven and Hell. Download it for free. We want to go scroll a little bit up from where I started to 247. Yeah. And let's see what we can get from somebody who's been there. The reason angels and spirits are so intimately united to us, that it seems to them as though our characteristics were their own, is that there is such an intimate union within us of the spiritual and the natural worlds that they are virtually one. How's that for an opening sentence? We've plopped you down in the middle of something, and he's just pointing back to points that were already made, but are not points that everybody has an intuitive knowledge of or that anyone's even heard of. Angels and spirits are so intimately united to us that it seems as though our characteristics were their own. In very brief, you have us here, people hanging out in the world. In order for consciousness to function, you have to have this sort of hierarchy of consciousness where you have spirits here, you have angels there. I'm going fast when I don't even draw the bodies on. Angels receive the ability to be conscious from the divine, goes down into them. They then go down into spirits. Spirits are closer to what we are. We are part of this vast chain of consciousness, and part of the way that works is there's sort of like a sharing of points of view, internal things that allow us to safely have this matrix to balance with good and negative spirits that make it so that we can think and feel in freedom to choose between good and evil and become the person we want to be by ourselves. Okay? And that's because we're the meeting place of the spiritual and physical worlds. If you want to know more, go read the paragraphs above. However, because we have separated ourselves from heaven, the Lord has provided that there should be angels and spirits with each of us, that we should be governed by the Lord through them. This is the reason there's such an intimate union. It's a strange idea. Swedenborg paints this picture that we have to have good and evil, or positive and negative spirits with us that allow us to exist in the right balance, like I was just going on and on about. It's a strange setup, and it was a weird thing for Swedenborg to encounter. It's a strange thing for you to encounter. I kind of like this Swedenborg channel. What are they talking about? And there's maybe a reason it seems strange, is that that's not how it's supposed to be. How it's really supposed to be, you're not supposed to have all this. What it's really supposed to be is there's God, the source of light and life and consciousness, enlightening us. This is how it's supposed to go. There's supposed to be a direct line from God to us. But because of the fall of the human race into selfishness and materialism, there has to be a workaround. This is sort of like duct tape, this whole situation we find ourselves in. Okay, we can make it work this way. It's not the ideal way, but it works really well now. It is the best way to create the best mental conditions for us. So, it would have been different if we had not separated ourselves, because then we could have been governed by the Lord through a general inflow from heaven without having spirits and angels assigned to us. That is, coincidentally, Swedenborg says animals are governed by an inflow from heaven instead of by spirit, because animals are in what he calls, this turtle is in, I didn't know what animal it would be till I started drawing it, the order of their life. They are what they're supposed to be. So heaven can work directly through them. Human beings have complicated it, so we get this whole thing here. There will be more on this later, though, when we describe how heaven is united to us. Again, that's in the book. All this is the preamble to the communication, how this affects the communication with the afterlife. Why can't we just all have communication with afterlife all the time? It's because of this whole setup arrangement here. When angels and spirits talk with us, it sounds just as audible as when we talk with each other. But it is not audible to people who are nearby, only to ourselves. Hey, did you hear that? No? This is because the speech of an angel or spirit flows first into our thought and then by an inner route into our organ of hearing, so it activates it from within. That actually, it's not just that you're going to have a communication with a spirit or an angel, something like that, so it just bypasses everything physical, everything that you can find out about the auditory something, and you just hear it because it's just spiritual. He says that actually speech goes into thought and activates the body. And this is, I couldn't find it. I was trying to get back to it again, but I had seen an article long ago that was saying, hey, people who are having hearing voices, right, who are hearing things that aren't there, the reason that seems so real to them is actually when they're hearing the voices, the brain part, it's either the brain or the processes sound, or in conjunction with the sort of like cilia in the ear or whatever, that actually lights up. It's actually going when they're hearing the voices. And I was like, dude, he's describing this right here, but I couldn't find that article. So the headline reads, guy running a religious show cites vague reference to unknown science that supports his theories. But check this out. I did find another article that I think you'll like just as much. Our speech, and I'll go with it just in a second. Our speech with each other flows first into the air and comes to our organ of hearing and activates it by an outward route, into your speaker, into your ears. We can see from this that the speech of an angel or spirit is heard with us. And since it activates our hearing mechanism just as much as our speech with each other does, it is just as audible. So it is playing by the same rules, it just takes a different route to get there. Now check this out. The fact that the speech of an angel or spirit flows down into the ear from within has been made clear to me from the way it flowed into my tongue as well and made it tremble slightly, though not with the actual motion involved when we are articulating the sounds of speech in the formation of words. So Swedenborg is saying angels or spirits were coming in, he could hear them, he could talk to them, and he knew that was activating the physical part of his brain, and he could tell as well because he could tell it was messing with his tongue. Not quite to the point where it was making him talk, and so as I was researching this, meaning trying to find that other article I was talking about, I hadn't read this part yet, and a different article I'd found, suddenly I was like, this is that exactly. Let me know if you think so. So there's this article, there's the part we want to get to, but the outline, the headline is, when people with schizophrenia hear voices, they're really hearing their own subvocal speech. And this is the article, you saw who it is. You can go visit this yourself. But right here, the thesis that's important here, or the point they're making, is this result meant that when schizophrenics were hearing voices in their heads, their vocal muscles were contracting. They were engaging in subvocal speech. Could this be like Swedenborg's the tongue trembling a bit? Now, why would I even bring this up? Because obviously I don't study this kind of stuff. What am I trying to say? Am I trying to say that Swedenborg is schizophrenic? Well, he wouldn't have known that this was part of it. So what I'm trying to say is that if really the stuff that makes up conscious phenomena is an interaction with the spiritual world, isn't it fascinating that he would have something that could be the same thing as he's saying, look, I could tell this was coming in from angels into my body because it was messing with also the things you speak, and they're seeing the same things happen here. Why'd I even bring it up? To me, totally fascinating. Not really the point of this episode, but man, someday I want to get someone who knows that kind of stuff, do a deep dive on this. How much of Swedenborg's description, little things like that in Swedenborg's description of this exploration of internal experience matches up with things that we're now learning about, mental illness, but also just regular mental, isn't it all mental illness in the end? Talking with spirits, so all this is a setup for why talking with spirits is rarely allowed nowadays, though. Because why? Because God is like, that's too much fun, you're not allowed. It's dangerous. The spirits then actually know that they're with us, which otherwise they would not. And evil spirits by nature harbor a murderous hatred for us and crave nothing less than our total destruction, body and soul. So back to the hierarchy here, that you need to have good and evil spirits right here, and right here. That allows us to be in freedom. But these spirits don't know that we're here, but the more there's a communication, the more you might get some unwanted interactions. So it's like a general safety mechanism. Not always. It's rarely allowed nowadays, and nowadays being 1700. So if you say, I'm having these experiences, I'm not saying you're not. I'm saying it was rare in Swedenborg's day. Who knows if that's changed, or maybe it's still relatively rare. This is actually what goes on in people. Now look at this. So this is interesting. I don't quite get this sense. So these evil spirits harbor this hatred. They crave nothing less than their total destruction, body and soul. This is actually what goes on in people who regularly lose themselves in delusions, even to the point that they lose touch with the pleasures appropriate to their natural person. So this is that, meaning this is the case of somebody who's gone off the deep end, as they say, and it's because these evil spirits have gotten a hold of them. They get people sucked so into this mental world that they lose touch with the pleasures appropriate to their natural person. That makes me think of somebody who's just lost touch with reality. I was just reading this article about somebody who was planning to do a mass shooting and got caught. And just like, how do you get to that point? You have to have lost touch with reality. Right? Is that what it is that hell can get more and more access to and make it so you don't even enjoy the things you should enjoy and get lost in this artificial, hellscape that leads to people being able to do stuff like that? But it's not all that. Look at these sort of different species here. There are some people who lead solitary lives who sometimes hear spirits talking with them without risk. But the Lord keeps these spirits a little space away so that they do not know they're with these individuals. Most spirits, you see, are not aware that there is any other world than the one they are living in. They're not aware. Doesn't it seem like spirits, like if you could talk to the spirits, that it'd be like this major wisdom upgrade? Spirits are people, according to Swedenborg. Spirits are just people, and pretty oblivious people, because spirits are what he calls us when we're in this state where we haven't yet ascended to heaven or chosen hell. So a lot of them are just kind of tuned out. They're so wrapped up in their own world. It's just so funny to think that this is it. It's not like they're all hovering around wise to the ways of earth and just like waiting to make improvements on how we live our life. They don't know. They didn't even know. They didn't even remember that there is a physical world that they came out of. So we're not allowed to talk back to them, since if we did, they would know. There's another way to get there. People who are constantly thinking about religious matters, so wrapped up in them that they practically see them within themselves, also begin to hear spirits talking with them. This is because when we voluntarily get wrapped up in religious matters, no matter what kind, without the interruptions of various useful activities in the external world, these matters enter into us very deeply and take substance there, so that they occupy the whole spirit, move into the spiritual world, and affect spirits there. And it's interesting, for somebody like Swedenborg, who seems so wrapped up in spiritual stuff, he's there writing these book after book after book about this kind of thing, he really seems here to be saying, we need to have this sort of, I'll put it green, grounding, interruption of various useful activities. You have to still do stuff. Do you know one of the last thing Swedenborg ever published? He was, had been doing all these books. The last thing was some paper on mining or something like that. Something very practical or about Sweden's economy, something very, very world focus, that he didn't lose touch with that. And that we're not supposed to go off into space and not think. It's the harmony. As it said earlier, we're the meeting place of the natural and the spiritual. So the ideal is you have knowledge about the way higher things work, but you're also really plugged in. And if somebody needs a ride, you know how to go and get there and give them what they need. However, people because he seems to cast these people, you'd think, oh, good for you, always thinking religiously all the time. Seems to cast us in a negative light. However, people like this are visionaries or fanatics, and that's what happens when you try to scroll up with the highlighter. No matter what spirit they hear, they believe it is the Holy Spirit, even though the spirits they hear are fanatical. And you hear all kinds of stories about people who believe that God is talking to them, the Holy Spirit, Jesus Christ is talking to them. There's so many of those. There's documentaries about all these kinds of people that believe Jesus is speaking to them, or the Holy Spirit is telling them to do something. And what I like about Swedenborg's explanation is that it's not the common sort of explanation we would have is this, that those people are crazy or are making it up, or there's nothing really there. And for some reason this happens all the time. Who knows? But Swedenborg's explanation is there really is, people can really hear the things they report hearing, they're really hearing. But it's just somebody scamming them. Like it's just somebody saying, oh, I'm the Holy Spirit, go do this. Just like again, I always love to use this example. Somebody sends you an email that says, I am your bank, give me your credit card. But they're not really your bank. This is not really the Holy Spirit telling you to do this stuff. It's totally antisocial. Spirits like this see false things as true. And because they see them as true, they convince themselves and also convince the people into whom they flow. Further, since spirits like this who command obedience have also begun to urge people to do evil things, here's a red flag. If you're getting a voice in your head that's commanding obedience, that's a red flag, because hasn't God set up this world? If we're really saying there's God, which even me saying that sentence, if the divine has set up this world, and it's a world in which we can really have this raging debate in the human race, is there even a God or not? Does that sound like the setup of a God who is forcing you to take a certain directive in life? Why is it so ambiguous? Why is it such an open-ended, go choose your own adventure world? Why doesn't God, right when you're born, sit you down and say, I'm going to let you understand things like you're an adult right now, I'm real, or every morning say, hey, I'm real, this is what you have to do. But yet instead we get these commands from God through revelation, which is just books that people can question the authenticity of or the practical usefulness of, and you get people have feelings, but why is it so open-ended? If that's the kind of freedom, intellectual freedom God maintains in the world, anything that's saying like, now you have to do exactly what I tell you, really, really vet that. That's as they say, a red flag. Have also begun to urge people to do evil things. That would be the big one. God doesn't tell people to do evil things. There's always going to be justifications. Oh, this isn't really evil. Just step back and is this evil? I shouldn't do this. They have gradually been moved away. Fanatical spirits can be differentiated from other spirits by the fact that they believe they are the Holy Spirit and what they are saying is divine. It could even be that the spirits don't think they're lying, but they're just out of their spirit minds. They do not harm those into whom they flow because those people offer them divine worship. I've talked with them on occasion, and talk with the spirits we're talking about now, and the unspeakable things they instill into their worshipers have come to light. They live altogether toward the left in a desert area. You can go visit them when you get to the spiritual world. Conversation with angels is not granted, though, except to people who are focused on truths that flow from good intent. So, you want to be able to talk to angels? There you go. Especially people who acknowledge the Lord and the divine nature within his human nature, because this is the truth in which heaven exists. So if you can get your mind right, then the conditions are there to maybe have this positive angelic communication. For as already noted, the Lord is heaven's God. The Lord's divine nature makes heaven. The Lord's divine nature in heaven is love for him and thoughtfulness from him toward one's neighbor. All of these are how do you get your mind right for angelic communication? That sort of stuff. And the whole heaven grasp as a single entity reflects a single individual, as does each community of heaven, and each individual angel has a perfect human form because of the Lord's divine human nature. These are all the things Swedenborg is spelling out in his books. He's saying, look, this is how heaven is. I'm giving you a description of this objective thing out there. This is how it is. If you start thinking these things and incorporating these teachings into the way you live, then you are going to be paving the way to maybe overt communication, maybe just the inflow of goodness and truth. Either one is great. We can see from this, the conversation with angels is not granted except to people whose deeper levels have been opened. And how do they get opened? How do you get into that state? By divine truths, all the way up to the Lord, who is love and wisdom, who is love for the whole human race, since it is into these that the Lord flows within us. And when the Lord flows in, so does heaven. That's what all this stuff we're learning about is it ends with this practical spiritual, hey, there are levels in you, and as you put the truths, which as you saw were about loving God, loving the neighbor, we lay these things straight in our mind, or the divine really is the one doing it and we're doing our little part, that creates this entryway for communication with heaven. It might be angels are talking to you. It might be you just get this love and wisdom to navigate life by and to radiate out, do good things for the people around you. Either way, we can't have a discussion in Swedenborg about how spirits interact with people without getting back to the core of it, which is be good, let in love, spread that love to other people. And that's the news from heaven. How'd it work? Do you think you can take these ideas and do anything with them for your life and for other people's lives? Leave it in the comments. Thank you for letting me talk about this. I don't know if I say that enough. I really enjoy getting to have the time to just dive into this with all of you. You've made this dream of mine come true. Thank you so much. I know I shouldn't ask you for something right after I thanked you, but would you please like and subscribe? That helps us out very much. And I hope that you have from this some kind of lift and that you take that out and spread it on and keep it going. Thanks.